Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Services Delegated Committee. Before we commence, could I request that all mobile telephones are turned off or switched to silent? Thank you. The Services Delegated Committee meeting is being live streamed on the Council website, so you'll be able to view the proceedings of the meeting, councillor deliberations and voting. The meeting is also being recorded and will be made available on the Council website soon after the meeting. Should technical problems be encountered during the meeting will be adjourned until the problem is rectified, or if needed, the meeting will be postponed. And my name is Councillor Jane Addis and I chair this committee. I'll start by introducing my fellow councillors and officers. So seated to my left on the horseshoe table in the council chamber are Councillor Jim Park, Councillor Susan Bigger, Councillor Cynthia Watson, Councillor Nick Stavrou, Councillor Felicity Sinfield, and then moving round the table, Councillor Wes Gold, Councillor Di Gillies and the Mayor, Councillor Gary Thompson. The officers in attendance tonight. To my immediate right, Philip Storer, the Chief Executive Officer. To my left and behind Councillor Stavrou, Carolyn McLean, Director Community Support, and Daniel Freer, Director Places and Spaces. And then to my right and behind Councillor Gillies, Mance Bassey, Acting Director Customer and Transformation, and Scott Walker, Director Urban Living. To my immediate left, David Thompson, Manager Governance and Legal, and then Helen Pavlidis, Senior Governance Officer. There are also a number of staff members in attendance this evening to assist us. The purpose of the Services Delegated Committee is to deal with issues relating to the provision of human and physical services and Council's infrastructure. For those in the gallery presenting this evening, when we come to the agenda item, it will be introduced by an officer, and then I'll call on you one by one to come forward and address Council. When you're making a submission, if you could present your viewpoint as clearly and concisely as possible on why you agree or disagree with the proposal. And you may also suggest an alternative approach which could satisfy you. If people could please not repeat what previous speakers have said. There's a time limit of 3 minutes for each speaker, and that does include councillors. I'll ask speakers to stand at the lectern. At the 2.5 minute mark, I'll ring the bell to indicate you have 30 seconds remaining, and if you could please conclude your presentation. And then after you've spoken, if you could please remain at the lectern while I ask if any councillor has a question for you. Now the first item is apologies. Mr. Thompson, are there any apologies?
Through you, Madam Chair, we have an apology from Councillor Hollingsworth, and I'm hoping Councillor Franco will join us shortly.
Thanks, Mr. Thompson. Adoption and confirmation of the minutes of the Services Delegated Committee meeting held on 11 October 2021. Is anyone prepared to move a motion to adopt the minutes? Councillor Thompson, you're happy to move?
Thank you.
The minutes, and seconded Councillor Sinfield?
Happy to.
Thank you. Could I check if anyone's opposed? No? So Councillor Thompson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Madam Chair. No, I'm happy to move and put that to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'll now put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. I don't think there's anyone opposed. I could see all the hands up, so that's carried unanimously. The next item is declaration of conflict of interest of any councillor or council officers. Councillors and council officers, are there any conflict of interest that need to be declared? Can't see anyone, thank you. So we'll move on to presentation of officer reports, and item 3.1, draft Borondara Reconciliation Strategy 2022 to 2026, and that's going to be presented by Nicole White, Manager, Community Planning and Development. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek the Services Delegated Committee's endorsement of the draft Burundara Reconciliation Strategy 2022 to 26, which you'll find at Attachment 1 for public exhibition between the 16th of November and the 14th of December. The draft strategy formalises Council's commitment to reconciliation and sets out a clear roadmap and framework for implementing reconciliation initiatives in the community, which are founded on 3 key themes that emerged during the community consultations. To provide advice on the development of the draft strategy and to assist with facilitating the community consultations, which were conducted across July and August, Council engaged an Aboriginal consultant, Karen Millwood, who is well respected in the local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. To ensure the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voices were heard and respected, 14 conversation-style consultation sessions were held with 24 key stakeholders from the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander sector. As the reconciliation process involves the non-Aboriginal community working together with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, Council also undertook pulse check surveys with the broader community, where we heard from 480 people and 26 local community service providers and organisations to understand their views and ideas about how to be involved and progress reconciliation locally. Council also met regularly with representatives from the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung Cultural Heritage Aboriginal Corporation and other key stakeholders to seek advice on the development of the strategy. The information gathered through the consultations, as well as the background use research, was used to inform the development of the strategy's vision, themes, strategic objectives, focus areas for action, and the implementation plan. The implementation plan, which will operationalise the draft strategy, outlines actions which will be undertaken over 4 years of the strategy. The public exhibition period will provide our community to have their say and provide feedback on the draft Burundara Reconciliation Strategy. Public consultation will be open online via our Engage Burundara website from Tuesday the 16th of November to Tuesday the 14th of December. The consultation opportunity will be promoted via Council's communication channels, including Council's website, social media platforms and department online newsletters. We'll also promote to key stakeholders in the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community sector, including all stakeholders who participated in the original consultation. Officers recommend that the Services Delegated Committee resolve to endorse the draft Burundara Reconciliation Strategy for public exhibition. Thank you. That concludes my comments.
Thank you very much, Ms White. Now we have one speaker wishing to make a submission on this item. And if I could ask Mr Keith Gove to come forward to the lectern, please. And if you could please state your name, the suburb in which you live and your interest, and whether you're for or against the officer's recommendation. Thanks, Mr Gove.
Thank you, Chair. Keith Gove from Burundara Reconciliation Network from the area of Hawthorn, and speaking in favour of the motion.
Thank you.
Really wanted to acknowledge that we are meeting on the land of the traditional owners, Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung, and recognise the work they've done over the generations, many generations, for this area. On behalf of the network, Burundara Reconciliation Network, I'd like to we appreciate the work that has been done by council officers. Thank you, Nicole, for leading that work on the draft reconciliation strategy. There's been significant progress over the last year or so, and leading to the draft strategy that you have in front of you. We acknowledge the consultation that's occurred, that was outlined by Nicole, engaging the traditional owners and other organisations, Aboriginal organisations in the community. It's a very important part of the process. We like the whole of council approach that is in the draft, where responsibilities are spread across a range of functions in the office. It's not just sitting in one area, arts or culture. It's picked up a broad range of responsibilities, and that's a very useful and important thing. It's a terrific step forward for the Boroondara community and for council. As a network, Boroondara Reconciliation Network, we're keen to continue to partner with the council in the rollout and further development of the strategy over its 4-year life. 4 years is a long time. We may well have different Commonwealth and state governments by that time, so it needs to be a flexible and agile strategy. And our inputs to the work will be informed by, guided by the traditional owners of the area. We note that there's still much to do in remedying a lot of the disadvantage that Aboriginal communities face. Evidence for that has been just in the last little while around vaccination rollouts. No, that's not local council business, but it's just a highlight that there is still unacceptable differences in life chances for Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people. This strategy goes some way to dealing with that.
So 30 seconds.
Thank you. A genuine sign of commitment would be for a Wurundjeri Woiwurrung elder to be present at the council meeting when the final strategy is finally approved, and we leave that idea with you. We will provide other feedback in the consultation phase. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillors, has anyone... Yes, Councillor Park, you have a question for Mr Gove?
I do, thank you. Do you have any comment about the desirability or otherwise for a formal reconciliation action plan?
As in the model that Reconciliation Australia develop. We see there being benefits in developing such a plan. One of the main advantages is there is an independent sort of quality assurance process that applies to it. We would be suggesting that that's a model that council could consider during the life of this strategy. The slight disadvantage is there is a little less flexibility around for them. Council officers may be able to comment on that. Our experience in other jurisdictions has been that sometimes the rigour of the structure is not as flexible as could be, and one of the benefits of the strategy as developed here is that it's particularly focused on the issues of Boroondara, and that's a good thing.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Yep.
Okay, I can't see any other lights on, so thank you very much, Mr Gove. If you'd like to return to your seat. Thank you. Now, we have no other speakers, so I'll return to Ms White for further comments. Nothing to add in response to the speakers? No. Thank you. Councillors, Councillor Bigger, you have a question for Ms White?
I don't have a question. I'd just like to foreshadow a motion. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Stavrou.
I don't have a question either. I'm sort of looking forward to second the motion.
Okay. I did see your light on, Councillor Thompson. You were queuing.
I was just lining up too, Madam Chair.
Okay. So I can't see any questions. So we'll. So, Councillor Bigger, you had a motion for us.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to put the officers. I'd like to move the officers' motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Stavrou, were you intending to second that one?
I'm very happy to second it.
Okay, thank you. So for the benefit of Councillor Biggar and Councillor Stavrou, is anyone opposed to that motion? No?
Not opposed, Madam Chair, but if I could just say a few words.
Yes, thank you. So I'll return to the mover, Councillor Biggar.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I certainly want to just thank the officers for their work on this really important strategy, and I think whenever you're doing something that involves this much engagement and real connection with the community, it's really important to do it right. And when I look at what's been done here in terms of the way you've tried to hear from the community in lots of different ways, I think that really bodes well for this piece of work. And it is really important. It's important for us locally, and obviously there's a continuing conversation going on, at state and national level, and it's great for us to have a formal part of that work. So I think I would just say that the next step is a very important step. It's in terms of, while we've done quite a lot of preliminary consultation, it's great to go out and check with our broader Burundara community, because this is very much a partnership piece of work. And so I would encourage my fellow councillors to support this recommendation, and thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Biggar. Councillor Stavrou is the seconder. Would you like to speak now?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will not speak for very long. I completely echo Councillor Biggar's words. I think I'm exceedingly proud of the continuing reconciliation strategy that our council is undertaking, and particularly the reconciliation plan the draft reconciliation plan that's here in front of us tonight. Of course, the plan contains a lot of the input from local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, which is a great thing, and also community pulse checks that has informed it as well. Looking forward to seeing the further commentary coming back to us from our community, and likewise I commend this plan.
Thank you.
Thank the officers for their great work.
Thank you. And Councillor Thompson, you would like...
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Just very briefly again to also reiterate thanks to the officers for their diligence this year working through with the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung, and just to say I've had an absolute pleasure being involved in the monthly meetings with yourselves and also with Auntie Julianne and Auntie Gail and Uncle Colin and Charlie Woolmore from the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Council. Thank you for your perseverance with us as we've worked through each different step. So very much look forward to this also going out for consultation and community feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't see any other lights on, so I'll go back to Councillor Biggar. Did you want to wrap up with anything?
No, really just to say that I look forward to this, this next step in our commitment to working with and understanding and learning respect for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? And all those against? No? So that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. White. Now, the next item is 3.2, which is adjoining 9 and 11 Weybridge Street, Surrey Hills, proposed sale of land from a previously discontinued right-of-way, and that's going to be presented by Philip Storer, our CEO. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This report relates to the sale of land which has been discontinued as a right-of-way, and the proposed land is subject to a process which requires advertising to neighbours to give them the opportunity to provide a response. So what you're doing this evening is considering whether or not to commence that formal statutory process, not making a final decision as to what the outcome will be. It might be fair to say that the proposal has been discussed with the neighbours of 9 and 11 Weybridge Street. Those neighbours are seeking slightly different outcomes. One proposal is for the land to be subdivided longitudinally, which basically means down the middle parallel to the side fences. The other is latitudinally, which means essentially you divide the length in half. One neighbour will get the front half, one neighbour will get the back half. They're the two scenarios, if you like, which have been discussed to date with the neighbours. Council's policy typically is that it seeks to achieve an equitable distribution of the land, which would generally mean it would be divided down the middle longitudinally, because that would give each owner equal access to frontage being probably the most valuable land available. So this evening what you're being asked to consider is the commencement of the statutory process to enable receipt of formal comments. That will then result in a report coming back to Council if there are objections to the proposal, and if there are no objections, the decision to proceed can be made either by myself or an officer I have delegated that decision to. So how we proceed depends upon whether there are submissions. Our proposal is that the best subdivision arrangement is for the land to be divided down the middle, which would give each owner access to frontage. I should make the point that there is a drain and a pit located in this land. The proposed boundary is designed to ensure that a fence can be erected on the new boundary without disturbing the asset or causing damage to it. So we believe that arrangement can certainly be achieved without causing any damage to the asset we have under the ground there. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I don't believe we have any speakers registered.
My understanding is that one speaker registered but has indicated no intention to speak if a party representing the other neighbour has not also asked to speak, and that is the case.
Thank you very much. So Councillor Watson, you had a question for Mr Storer?
Yes, curiosity question really. But you said one neighbour was in favour of longitudinal and the other the latitudinal. Do we have could you perhaps explain a bit further why there's the difference? Why one's seeking each a different outcome? Yes.
I would imagine, and I can't speak for certain on this, but I would imagine that the owner who is located at number 11 Weybridge Street and is seeking the latitudinal division would like to gain access to the full width of frontage of that discontinued road.
I see, so speculative. If you latitudinal and said, well, you get the back, that's on the basis of what you said, that he might have a different view if he didn't get the frontage. So just curious, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Councillor Gold, you have a question?
I'm just going to ask for a clarification, but I'll also, as the local member is stuck behind the chair tonight, I'm happy to move a motion. Just as a point of clarification, this road or back lane ran a fair distance further into the blocks. Is there any reason why these last two blocks weren't subdivided at the same time as the balance?
I'm not able to tell you of the history of this because the road was discontinued some time ago. So I'm not quite sure what the background was as to how the decision was made around the extent of the closure and how those boundaries would be drawn. But all I can say is that in this case, you are only dealing with the sale of the land, not the closure of the road.
Yes,
often you'll find yourselves dealing with both at the one time.
And I suspect the queries that were going through my head were sorted out at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stavrou.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the event of the longitudinal subdivision, if one of the, opposing neighbours doesn't want it, is there a process of how that will be dealt with?
Yes, we do have circumstances where sometimes council will close a right of way, for example, and seek to sell, but abutting owners may not wish to purchase. If one of the abutting owners does not wish to purchase, the land would be offered in its entirety to the other owner, and they would have the opportunity to purchase all of the land.
Thank you.
Thank you. That another question or? No, thank you. Councillor Gold, you foreshadowed a motion. Oh, I don't think Mr. Storer has any more responses. No, sorry. So you foreshadowed a motion.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just, in your absence from the horseshoe table, I'd like to propose that we accept the officer's recommendation tonight.
Thank you. And Councillor Watson, you're happy to second?
I am happy to second. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now, for the benefit of the mover and the seconder, is anyone opposed? No. So I'll go back to Councillor Gold to speak to the motion.
I really don't have a lot to add to what the officers have already recommended. I think it's wonderful that we're selling this off, and at this time of budgetary challenge, we should probably look for more examples like this to sell. Thank you, and I recommend it to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Gold. Councillor Watson is the seconder. With everyone's indulgence, I'll just briefly, because it is in my ward, just say something very briefly that I am aware that there are differences of views between the neighbours, but I think as Mr. Storer emphasised, this is very much about the initial step, and we'll hear what people say and try to respond as best we can. So I'll now put that motion. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. And welcome, Councillor Franco. So the next item is item 3.3, Updated Climate Action Plan Implementation Plan. And this item is going to be presented by David Shepherd, Manager Environmental Sustainability and Open Spaces. Thanks, Mr. Shepherd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This report presents a revised Climate Action Plan Implementation Plan for adoption. The initial implementation plan was adopted by Council on 27th of September at the same time as adopting the Climate Action Plan itself. The implementation plan includes actions funded from a variety of different council project and operating budgets, including a specific budget allocation, which was increased from $400,000 to $1 million as part of the October amended budget process. There's a strong focus in the plan on working with and supporting our community to take action. The budget increase has been reflected in the implementation plan by increased funding for some of the actions to increase their output, the bringing forward of some actions from year 2 to year 1, which has then allowed for some additional actions to be added. The specific changes are detailed in the report itself. The implementation plan has over 80 actions which will be undertaken in the next 2 years to commence delivering the Climate Action Plan and working towards the targets that Council has set. The officer recommendation is to adopt the revised implementation plan, and I commend that to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, we have 2 speakers wishing to make submissions on this item. Our first speaker is William Howard, if you would mind coming forward. Oh, sorry, I believe Miss Annie Nihil would like to come first. Thank you very much. And if you would mind stating your name, the suburb in which you live and your interest in the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. My name's Annie Nile. I live in Surrey Hills and I'm a member of the Kooyong Climate Change Alliance.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for having me, councillors and council officers. Despite having only 3 minutes, I would like to take time to acknowledge that we are on the land of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people and that sovereignty of the land was never ceded. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Once again, we in the Kooyong Climate Change Alliance would like to congratulate you on the Climate Emergency Declaration, the Climate Action Plan and the Implementation Plan. These are commendable and significant steps in providing leadership to protect all of our futures. We welcome the additional expenditure allocated for Climate Action Plan implementation and the update of the implementation plan, but we remain very disappointed that Council has not allocated more of its budget to climate action. We acknowledge that there is budget spending that will have a positive climate impact in addition to the $1 million specifically allocated to the Climate Action Plan. But however it's calculated, climate expenditure remains a very small proportion of Council's $255 million total budget and is clearly not consistent with the recognition of a climate emergency. A major step up in climate action is needed over the next 10 years if the climate is to be kept even marginally safe for future generations. Now is the time to act, especially as going early and hard greatly reduces total emissions at target date. We believe that Council's current approach still remains too close to business as usual to have the capacity to deliver the community targets set out under the Climate Action Plan. Within the constraints of the budget set for 2021-2022, we welcome the proposed updates to the implementation plan. We hope we will have an opportunity to work with councils and council officers towards a more ambitious and thus productive budget for 2022, 2023 and beyond. We also hope that this will result in a further update of the implementation plan to deliver more ambitious action in 2022-2023. We also hope Council will consider a process of key stakeholder engagement as occurs in other plans and strategies. This could encompass a stakeholder network to support the implementation plan, as is being recommended for the Reconciliation Action Strategy adopted as a draft tonight. Such a network could valuably partner with Council in the process of community engagement and also provide input to the Internal Advisory Committee as requested. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, just check. Councillor Franco, you have a question for Mr Nehill?
Yes, I do, Chair. Could you expand or explain the stakeholder implementation proposal that you have and how that might work with our internal committee?
Yes, so I think it has been our position from the outset that it would be, I'm trying to remember the terminology of this, there are two versions of how a committee can operate, and it had been our position from the start that we would prefer it to have the community consultation aspect of that. So I guess any way that we could have more community input into the current structure would be much appreciated. And I think the reflecting on how the Reconciliation Action Plan was implemented is a good model to start off with. I don't have anything more specific than that, sorry, Councillor.
Thank you very much. I can't see any other lights, so thank you very much if you'd like to return to your seat.
Thank you.
And our next presenter is William Howard. And again, if you could state your name, your suburb and your interest in the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is William Howard. I'm a resident of Glen Iris, and I'm also here on behalf of Kooyong Climate Change Alliance. We thank you for the opportunity to present to you. I'd like to highlight areas which I think deserve high priority for early rollout of the implementation plan. Firstly, we urge that the community engagement strategy should be intensified and expedited. This, we believe, is central to reducing community emissions by assisting people to move to fully electric homes, solar panels, air conditioning for both heating and cooling, and heat pumps for hot water. We're pleased that the Home and Business Energy Audit Program has been brought forward. To be effective, this program must offer comprehensive audits, and to maximise uptake, we believe that the audits should be free for low-income households and costs minimised or eliminated for other parties. We also urge a much stronger climate focus than is in the current Living for the Future program, and we believe the schools program should not be delayed until the financial year 22 to 23. We're disappointed that the Council remains unambitious in its transitions from gas. Disconnection from gas in all Council operations would provide clear leadership to the community that the first priority is to transition from gas to renewable electricity. We're aware that Brimbank Council decided to use heat pumps powered by solar for all heating at its new aquatic centre, we urge Boroondara Council to do likewise in its redevelopment of the Kew Recreation Centre. We welcome the bringing forward of the appointment of a landscape compliance officer, and we welcome the plantings at the Freeway Golf Course. We strongly support the development of the Boroondara urban greening strategy in the implementation plan. We regard implementation of a whole of municipality strategy for developing the urban forest as a key priority, and it has very strong community support. We believe commencement of the strategy should not wait for the tree audit to be finalised, and that an increase in the greening of Boroondara, other than by planting trees, can and should proceed now. Of course, given the importance of trees, there should be an intensive program of tree planting once the audit is done. There are, we believe, many other worthy aspects of the Climate Action Plan and the Implementation Plan, which I can't address due to time constraints. KCCA seeks ongoing close involvement with Council to achieve significant climate action.
Thank you. Well done. Perfect timing. Any questions for Mr. Howard? No, so thank you very much. You can return to your seat. Thanks, Mr. Howard. And I'll return to Mr. Shepherd to respond to any matters raised.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and appreciate the number of positive comments that were made through those two submissions on the implementation plan and the climate action plan. I would just say in relation to the budget commitment by Council that our best estimates of the value of the implementation plan is close to $10 million per annum. It's difficult to give a really exact number on that because some of the items are proportionate part of the overall budget for those projects, but that's our best estimate at the moment, is close to that $10 million figure, which is a significant spend on climate action. Really pleased to hear the commentary around working with the community and the opportunities for community involvement, and it's something that we are very keen to explore the possibilities in that space as well. So it's great that we have an engaged community that are willing to work with us and assist us to take positive action in the delivery of our implementation plan. I think I'll close my comments there, but thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks very much, Mr. Shepherd. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Shepherd? Councillor Gold.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions, but I'd also like to foreshadow a motion as you might expect. I'm interested, Mr. Shepherd, in program. Sorry, I might speak into this. I'm interested in program. It's very late in the year, we understand. It took a while for us to get the total budget in place, but I would anticipate that you'd anticipated some action this year. I wouldn't mind knowing how confident you are of getting a bit of a way down in this program this year, but I'd also like you to focus on comments on the community engagement strategy, because I see that's, as a number of the speakers have mentioned tonight, that's a great opportunity for us to accelerate this program by combining and working with the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you happy to respond, Mr. Shepherd?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, in terms of the program, we are very confident that we're able to deliver in accordance with the budget this year. As you say, we had the opportunity to anticipate what the increased allocation may be, or at least plan for the potential of a budget increase, and so we were doing that and planning and scheduling works accordingly. And the community engagement strategy is an absolute priority for us, so it will be one of the first things that we deliver and move forward, and look forward to discussing with the advisory committee in the very near future.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? So, Councillor Gold, you foreshadowed a motion?
I did, Chair. Through you, I'd like to recommend we adopt the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. And Councillor Bigger, you had your light on?
I'd like to second that, thank you.
Thank you. So for the benefit of the mover and the seconder, is anyone opposed to that motion? Councillor Watson? Thank you. So we'll now return to the mover to speak to your motion. That's Councillor Gold, sorry.
Thank you. Look, I'd like to start off with, as we did when the draft of this was presented, and congratulate the officers on a great and very detailed plan. There's obviously a lot of thought went into it, and I've got to say many of us are very impressed by what's being put together, so thank you. And also for preempting the fact that we might find some more money and sort of anticipating that for the year. I think that's great forward thought. I've taken great pleasure in reading through it. There's a lot in there, and I'm very excited about quite a number of things in there, particularly those things that will bring the community in to work with us and chase that 98, 99% of emissions which come from the community. Things like the bulk buy programs are particularly exciting, and I think the community will welcome those. The audit programs, I think, is essential, because a lot of people, many of the opportunities we have in making change are missed out at the planning stage. Clearly, the gas transition plan is going to be a difficult one to put together, but we've got to make a start somewhere. Urban greening is very exciting. The charging stations will show some real commitment by council to that around the area, not to mention those of us who buy EVs in the very near future. The shared trail expansions, I think, are fantastic. There's clear gaps in some of the trails, and as we see more people getting onto bicycles and actually walking, they will be very, very welcome. But community engagement, as I mentioned before, is something I'm keen to see us all move forward with very quickly. And finally, I just comment on the inclusions within this implementation plan to report back to us regularly on the progress that we make, so we know we're moving forward in a positive way and actually achieving stuff. So on the basis of that, I'd recommend your recommendations tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gold. Councillor Bigger is the seconder. Would you like to speak now?
Can I reserve my right? Thank you.
You can. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair. I remain opposed to the spending of the extra money, as I have proposed this in other places before. We have a pandemic, and that hopefully we're at the midpoint, but who knows? And we are in a state of emergency here in Victoria. So I believe increasing the budget from 400 to anything is quite premature. We have not as yet considered as a council a pandemic recovery plan for which there may need to be expenditure allocated. We don't know what form that will take. That is yet to come forward. So I will also note that since the beginning of the pandemic, since we're talking about spending money here, we've lost $40 million in revenue, and that is no small chunk of change. So I believe that this is premature. It needs to be considered in the light of what may need to be done for pandemic recovery, and so I will not be supporting the motion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to speak to this, but I've been prompted to by Councillor Watson, and in recent days and weeks I've had a few conversations with colleagues and officers. And I feel the need to probably clarify my position from when I've spoken on this in the past in relation to increasing funding or funding it at all. And I welcome the implementation plan. I think it's probably the most important part of this process that Council has been on. So the point that I would like to make is that I'm not prepared to say categorically one way or the other what I will or won't support as far as funding is concerned on this. But when initiatives come forward, I think they should be assessed on their merits at the time. So I'm very willing to support additional funding towards environmental sustainability initiatives if those cases are presented at the time and they're justified and they're well thought out and they seek to achieve certain objectives. I won't support funding that can't be spent by officers because we're human resource poor within the time period that's set. So I'm happy to support this evening and I'm happy to consider additional funding towards these types of plans, implementation plans, should the need arise. But I know that I have spoken probably more in alignment with what Councillor Watson has said previously, and I do think that a pandemic recovery plan is a very high priority for us, and I acknowledge what Councillor Watson has said, but I will be supporting this evening. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Franco.
Thank you. Well, I actually agree with Councillor Sinfield that the implementation plan is probably the most important part of the climate action plan. I just want to touch on a few issues here. Firstly, it is incredibly important, and it should have been part of the public consultation process that we undertook with the climate action plan, which went out without the implementation plan. I just want to reiterate that point repeatedly because I think it's a governance failure on our part as a council for not having pushed that through in that way, as we do and as all councils do with action plans. It is very important. It's pleasing to see the action plan here. I'm very pleased to see the work that the officers have done. I think it's presented in a very effective way. But again, it's without consultation. I hope in 2 years when we review it, we do it with full public consultation. I want to put that on the record now, and I think that it's fundamental. I also want to reiterate the issue of funding. It's been discussed. I'm disappointed that we didn't push for the additional 1 million completely, taking it to 1.4, but let's contrast fundamentally at the council meeting at which we adopted the revised budget, this council approved $18.6 million for a customer first tender. So let's be absolutely clear about where our priorities are as an elected council. And if we're serious about the climate emergency declaration, we need to actually act in accordance with our statements. Finally, I just want to touch on governance, and I do think the governance structure, I welcome the comments that Annie Nile made. I think we need to give serious consideration to the way our advisory committee operates. Firstly, it really needs to become an implementation committee, an oversight committee, and it would be good to have external representation, qualified, capable external representation on that committee. And I think that's something we as a council need to look to and work with the community in that regard. And as well as having regular reporting back on our effective implementation. On the implementation, I do think we need sufficient resources as a council to ensure effective implementation of the implementation plan. I'll just make the point, I do think we have those resources in respect of customer first initiatives. I'm not convinced that we have the same level of resources as a council in respect of the climate action plan. And I think that's something we need to look at. I think that was a good point. And look, Felicity, Councillor Sinfield raised that in a way. And the final point, another final point. I do reject the views that Councillor Watson has expressed. I think to vote against this because there's a pandemic in relation to COVID. Well, we do have an environmental crisis on our hands, a global one, and I think we need to do our part. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franco. Councillor Bigger, you reserved your right. I think now's the time.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add because I think most of my points have probably already been made. I think the only thing I will emphasize, and it goes to our two speakers, that I very much agree with them that if this is, as many councillors around this table have said at different times, that sort of 98 to 98.9% of the emissions that we are needing to reduce come from the community, then it is absolutely fundamental that we work with the community fully hand in hand to do that, because effectively it is us as community members, because we are both community members and council, but us as community who will make those changes in our lives. So I really would echo that point that we need to think very carefully, I think, as we go forward about how do we have such a fabulous, engaged, enthusiastic, knowledgeable community, as Mr. Shepherd mentioned, and so I think it is incumbent on us to really harness that energy in a positive way and working together. So I really look forward to seeing how that evolves in the new year. And apart from that, I would encourage my fellow councillors to support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bigger. Councillor Galt, as the mover, would you like to?
Thank you, Chair. Look, I know I was strong in having a bigger budget, and there was a number of options put forward to us, and there was a whole series of potential implementation programs attached to those. In the end of the day, I saw we got a maximum gain with the $1 million that's now been approved additional. And the additional didn't get us a huge amount more on what we can see lying ahead of us. The community, quite a number of community groups have mentioned that we should be spending more, and I can understand exactly where the sentiments are coming from. Knowing what now the global view on expenditure and climate change is focusing on, and we need to do a lot in the next 10 years. So that's why I think I stressed earlier tonight about the need to join with the community and implement the strategy and hear back from the community and what they're proposing. Because I'd love to see if there's any ideas behind that we haven't thought about that we need to consider. Also picking up on what Councillor Sinfield said, I'm not one to spend for the sake of spending. I think we've got to have jolly good reasons for it. And I think there will be times as we implement this program we'll need bigger lumps. So for instance, there aren't the electric vehicles around at the moment that we necessarily buy for our heavy work. When they do come online, there may be a time where this council needs to look seriously at switching across completely. That's the time to approve that budget. So I'm very excited about what we've approved to date, but there may be times in the future where we have to do a bit more. So let's get going with it. Let's get going. It'll be exciting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gold. Now, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Thank you. So that motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. So item 3.4, Union Road LXRP level crossing removal project, planning or project boundary amendment, endorsement of council submission, and that's going to be presented by Claire Davies, Senior Coordinator, Transport Advocacy. Thank you, Ms Davey.
Wonderful, thank you, and through you, Chair. Councillors, thank you for your time tonight. This report seeks a resolution from Council about a submission to the Level Crossing Removal Project, the LXRP, and the Minister for Planning about the proposed changes to the Union Road and Mont Albert Road Level Crossing Removal Planning Project boundary. On 11 October 2021, the LXRP launched a community consultation about proposed changes to that planning project boundary, with the changes being the inclusion of 3 properties in Burundara. The additional properties are 2 residential properties at 12 and 14 Montrose Street, Surrey Hills, and 1 commercial property at 605 Canterbury Road, Surrey Hills. The 2 residential properties have been voluntarily acquired by the Victorian Government, and they enable the inclusion of a second entrance on the northern side of the train line. I would like to note that Section 4 of the report states that the station entrance has been moved from Lawn Parade Reserve to Montrose Street. For clarity, the station entrances are provided at both Lawn Parade Reserve and Montrose Street. The provision of an entrance at Montrose Street has allowed the LXRP to shift the station buildings to the north, reducing the station building footprint in Lawn Parade Reserve itself. The commercial property on Canterbury Road will be leased by the LXRP and used to house the construction workforce. The building is currently vacant and was formerly a mechanics workshop. So council officers consider the changes to the planning project boundary will not adversely affect our community and have prepared a submission, which was attachment 1 to the report, to reflect this. The submission also includes requests to ensure the impacts of construction felt by our community are minimised. The LXRP consultation closed on Sunday, 7 November 2021. To ensure that we met this LXRP deadline, council officers provided the draft submission to the LXRP on Friday, 5th of November 2021. We noted it had not been considered or endorsed by council, that it was subject to consideration at tonight's meeting, and that formal correspondence would follow after this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Davey. Are there any questions? I can't see any. Councillor Watson, you question or?
No question, happy to foreshadow a motion.
I think the time has come.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Ms Davey, for your presentation. I think this is...
Is it the motion on the table?
It is the motion that's on the table, thank you.
And Councillor Thompson's happy to second. Thank you. I'll come back to you to talk to your motion. Thanks, Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Chair. I think this is fairly straightforward. I think it's something positive with a move with our community wellbeing in mind. And so welcome this development in the project. But also noting that you are the ward councillor and may like to offer a particular view, so I'll keep my remarks fairly simple.
Thank you. And I did miss asking if anyone was against this motion. No, thank you. Councillor Thompson as the seconder, did you wish to speak?
No, nothing further, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I could just say a couple of words. Yes, it is in my ward. I think what I want to say is to thank Miss Davey and her team for the ongoing work and how devoted you've been to trying to do the very best you can for the community. While we've all been rather disappointed with some of this process, we've been very happy with the work Council has done, and to me this seems like a very straightforward change that we're seeking that in many ways will just tidy up this project a little bit. So I'll return to the mover.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to echo your thanks to Ms Davey for the exceptional work that she's done and commend the motion to my fellow councillors.
Thank you very much. So I'll now put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you. So the next item is general business. Are there any items of general business? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one item of general business, and I recognise tonight as your last night for chairing this committee. So on behalf of all councillors and council staff, we thank you for your leadership of steering us through these committee meetings over the last 12 months. And again, thank you again. Thanks,
Thanks very much, Councillor Thompson. It's been a great pleasure. Any other items of general business? No, thank you. So urgent business. Can't see any lights on. Confidential business? No, thank you. Let me just get the page turned. So that's the end of our meeting. So to thank all of you in the gallery for your attendance, and I want to take the opportunity to wish all of you good health, you and your family, and I declare the Services Delegated Committee closed. Thank you at 7:30. Thank you, councillors.